Okay, so I think I'm going to make a quick video and just ramble about nonsense, because why not? Um, I fasted. Today's my third day of fasting, which is something I've never done in my life, and I always wanted to. And when I get to the second day, I get really hungry, and I'm just like, well, what's the point? And I eat. But for some reason, I was able to fast for 2 days, and I'm going on to my third day now, and I'm not getting ravishingly hungry yet, which is great. And another interesting thing is that I feel really good this morning. I always have this problem where I eat and then I just crash hard, and I just feel horrible. That kind of wipes me out for the rest of the day. So something's going on. Talked to AI about it, and it's like, well, maybe it's metabolic problems or how your body converts chemicals into energy. There's some problem there, or it's a digestion problem, or something's going on where it's just your body has to consume a lot of energy to deal with something, or it's just not getting the energy. So I don't know. But for now, and I always felt like God told me, hey, fast for 3 days. I'm like, oh, okay. And then the second day, I'm like, did God really say that? But anyways, it's working right now, and this is awesome. So I feel good. Who knows how I'll feel later? You never really know. But yeah, and then the biggest issue is going to be getting back into food. I mean, 3 days isn't a long time. For me, it's a long time. It feels like a long time, but getting back into food is. I fasted for 4 days once, but I did lots of juice, and I probably had more calories in the juice than I maybe did normally. I didn't realize how much I was taking in, but when I did kind of get back into food, I gorged and then I threw up and I got just felt horrible. So I don't know. I probably undid a lot of the benefits of that fast. But anyways, so my interest always seems to be the connection of the spiritual world to the physical world. Um, and when I look at, I believe God gave me a revelation a few years ago about the nature of reality. Because I've always had a hard time figuring out, like when you believe in Jesus and you're being spiritual and praying and all these things, is it like a replacement for the physical world where you only focus on the spiritual world and ignore everything else? And I never really understood how to kind of combine the two. Um, keep your mind on heavenly things, Paul keeps saying. So it's like, okay, well, cool. I can't really see the spiritual world, so what am I focusing on? Love, joy, peace. These things are good, but those are things that exist in the physical world. They're kind of related to your mind and stuff like that. So I got very confused and never really had a good answer. But I think I'm kind of starting to see um, things a little bit more clearly. I think God showed me that the nature of the physical world, the physical world is real. It's not something to be ignored. Um, but anyways, so here's a thing that I think is true, not 100%, but the word test, I think, comes from the word taste. And there's a verse in the Bible that said, "Taste and see that the Lord is true, good." And I believe that is a principle that goes beyond just spiritual thing. It also goes into the physical world that God created. I believe the physical world is very close to God because He created it. It came directly from His mind. It is the way it is because God wanted it to be that way. Gravity exists. Gravity is a constant acceleration force of, I think, 8.41 meters per second or something, but that's a constant acceleration force that exists, and I believe that happens because God wanted it to, and it applies to rockets, it applies to friction, it applies to, a million things in this world. And it can be simulated very accurately with computer simulations, and that mathematical formula exists in the world, I believe, because God put it there. So taste and see, to me, means try things, and that's what I'm doing. I'm fasting. I'm just trying it, um, and see what happens. It's not like God is saying do this, do that, do this, where I don't have to use my brain at all to navigate life. He's saying go out and try things, see what happens, test it. And I believe that, is good with a religion where you say you're a non-Christian. You say, well, taste and see that the Lord is good. Try praying, try seeking God, try learning, and that's good. But I believe it applies beyond that to the physical world, where in life we should be not get stuck in comfort, not get stuck in ruts, but to do things outside of our comfort zone and just see. I used to do things that were kind of crazy, like just to do them. Like I took my nephew and we went on a hike in not in the middle of the night, but the sun had gone down. It was like 10 p.m. or something. We just hiked up the mountain and found a nice clearing and had a meal, and it was awesome. And had to use lights, and it was just pushing the limits of what you can do, and saying, hey, what is there outside of my comfort zone that would be cool to do, and not limiting yourself to just what you're used to. So I think it's good to always push the limits, and then you learn from that. So taste and see. So yeah, here's my idea. How close is God to the world that He created? And I think if you only focus on the world, you miss the spiritual reality. So that's, I guess, the extreme. That's bad. So if you look at, say, Karl Marx, communism guy, he would talk about how religion is the opium of the masses, and how it it's like helps them through deal with the miseries of life, but that it's ultimately distracting them from kind of what's important. So he said, you should ignore religion. So that's cool. I don't believe that. I believe you're missing a core component to your total worldview if you ignore, this idea that there's a God, that there's an afterlife, that there's a spiritual reality outside of this reality that can't be observed through science. I believe science is a tool of this world that applies to the physical world, and I believe it's a useful and good tool. I like to look at like Mario. So you give Mario a set of tools to interact with his environment. He can jump, he can hit things with his head, I guess. But that doesn't apply outside of Mario's world. You can't use those mechanics that were created in world in the Mario game to apply to the physical world. Maybe they're modeled on it, but they're so anyways, we have mechanics in the physical world that don't apply to the spiritual world, but still shouldn't ignore them. So Karl Marx said, ignore religion, ignore the afterlife. Those are just opiates to get people through the miseries of work. But I don't believe that's true. Or say you look at pagan religions where they worship the creation and they put the creation kind of above. I don't believe that's good. I think the physical creation is kind of subject to this spiritual world, God. So it's about proportions and limits and keeping things in relation. So I see people get saved, and God saves them from all the traps of life: drug addiction, smoking, bad decisions in relationships, things like this. All these traps that exist in the physical world, but it's almost like you need a connection to God to avoid them. So Jesus can save you from yourself and your sin, your pride, your misconception. So it's almost like Jesus is the key to interacting properly with the physical world. Because maybe your body, like, so here's the thing I kind of been thinking about the last little while. Your body lies to you. So I get really hungry and I want to eat, and I eat lots of food, love it. But my body's telling me, oh, you need this food. But here I am, I fasted for 2 days and I feel great. So it's almost like my body was lying to me about how much food I really need. And where did I get this energy? Why do I have energy when I didn't eat for 2 days? Well, your body has lots of energy stored away, and it's telling you need more, but you don't. So it's kind of like your body lies to you. And when I was addicted to smoking, it was like I wanted it so bad. My body was telling me that I wanted it, and I had very little self-control, and I'd say okay, and when I get that craving, I would just go smoke, and then I'd smoke, and I'm like, oh, this is, I hated it. And I was like, why am I doing this? It's so dumb, and it's such a waste of money. But it's like your body can lie to you, so you need more than just the physical reality and your body to, you need like the Jesus to save you from yourself, and then you can interact with the physical world in a more meaningful and proper way. So it's very weird. It's very interesting. Um, so you look at religion. I believe so. Jesus is real. Jesus is the truth. Jesus came to set people free, but he came to set the Jews free from that religious bondage, the rules and regulations that weren't helping them, that weren't in line with reality. So they had created this religious legal system that wasn't, and they had kind of lost sight of what the purpose was behind the laws and these rules. So I believe Jesus set you free from that religious bondage. Like I see a lot of Christians, and I think there's a lot of religion mixed in with their faith. There's a lot of rules that don't have any foundation, that aren't really benefiting them, and do this, do that, and no, this will make you holy. And if you turn around 3 times and jump up and down, well, it makes you holy. Well, there's no basis for that rule. There's no reason, and that's religion. That's kind of looking at spiritual things without actually God and without truth. So I think, so based on your definition of what religion is, I think religion is an evil force in the world. And if you want to look at world religions, and what motivates people's decisions, the closer that is to truth, the better off they'll be. But if that, these religions are lying to people and making up false ideas, and saying do this, do that, then if it's not connected to the truth, if it's not connected to Jesus, then it's going to be limiting people, and that's going to have a major effect in the world. But you get all these major religions, and they all converge on Jerusalem. So you get Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. You get these 3 major religions all converging. So to me, sometimes Jerusalem kind of represents just religion. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it is an interesting thing. So I don't agree with atheists. I heard someone say, Christians and atheists agree that 99% of the world's religions are false. It's just atheists go a step further and say that Christianity is false, which I don't believe. I believe Jesus is real. I believe the spiritual world is real. I've had real spiritual experiences that there's no doubt in my mind that Jesus is real. I've had visions, and I've had real change. So I cried out to Jesus in a very dark time in my life, and he saved me, and it was very obviously real. But then I've had friends who, they believe in Jesus, but then they were all driving one night, and they were doing spiritual warfare, and they're praying for stuff, and then they thought demons were chasing them down alleys, and they were trying to outdrive them in their car, and it was kind of the goofiest story I've ever heard in my life. It's like, okay, I'm pretty sure none of that happened. It was all in your head. So there's real, and then there's fake. And even in the spiritual things, Christians mix in fake things with their with real. I don't care about anything that's fake. I only want what's real from God. And I have to be honest with myself and say, hey, maybe some of the things I think aren't right, aren't from God, aren't real. It's a delusion. And even Christians can have those delusions and say, hey, is this really real, or is this just me and my brain making stuff up and interpreting things in a wrong way? And I think that happens actually a lot more even to strong Christians, lifelong Christians. Everybody has that little bit of delusion in there, and it's kind of important to figure that out. And maybe some bondage, like you're limiting yourself, you're creating these rules. Oh, I got it, and maybe it's not true. God can set you free. When I was a new Christian, I was kind of on my own, living in a really dark place, and I kind of thought I was God's savior to the world, so I was out witnessing, and but I was kind of neglecting my own life. I think God wanted me to be, hey, just common sense, fix your life, get sorted out with work and all these things. But I thought, oh, God wants me to be out witnessing and saving people and all these things. And then I was just tired one night, and I thought, I got to go downtown, and I've got to witness to people, and I just got to. If I take the last bus, then I'm trapped there. I can't get home. I have to, stay. I'll force myself to be out there witnessing. But I was really tired and didn't want to, and I was like, no, I'm gonna do it. So I had this kind of prideful self-righteousness that I had to get out there and save the world. So I go downtown, and I'm just exhausted. I'm like, oh, I'm trapped now. What did I do? But after about an hour of realizing I wasn't supposed to be there, and I was just kind of putting these things on myself that weren't from God, I remembered that I was going to school down there at the time at a adult upgrading center thing, and I had brought my bike, but my bike had a problem, a mechanical problem. I can't remember why I left it, but I had left it a few days earlier, and I was like, oh, my bike's here, crazy. So I went and I got my bike, and I was able to fix the problem or whatever, and I had a ride home. It was kind of like God was saving me from myself. He's like, here, go home, have some rest, and this isn't for me. This is your own spiritual pride. You think you're super cool, but you're not. So yeah, went home, and that was great. And then I had an amazing ride home. It was like the most peaceful, restful, and the whole street. I had Ogden Road all to myself, and this street was empty, and I was just kind of weaving, not super safe, but it was fine. In the middle of the night, I think it was like 1 or 2 in the morning, and it was a really gift from God. It was a learning thing too, just kind of realizing, I don't have to put all these limits on myself. I can focus on very, very commonsensical things, improving my life, focusing on school, learning things that I enjoy. So there is a lot of spiritual bondage that people need to be aware of. So my another thing I'm interested in is kind of wisdom versus like spiritual guidance. So if God wants us to have wisdom, then he wants us to understand the world and understand how to navigate it and make good choices. But that's different than him just saying, do this, do that. So if we have spiritual guidance, I think it's more often that God is not going to tell you exactly what to do in every situation. He's going to teach you about the world, and then you're going to be wise and know how to navigate it. So we shouldn't ignore these kind of principles in the physical world that are important. And I don't think God is going to always be there telling you exactly what to do in every situation. A lot of times when you get like a spiritual revelation, what I think is it's more him shining a light on an aspect of reality that you weren't thinking about, or shining a light on your situation so that it's not just do this. It's more like, hey, this is how this works. This is understand this component of the world around you. So I think God is always teaching us about the physical world, and how things work in there. So I pray for wisdom, but I also pray for spiritual guidance. But a lot of that spiritual guidance is still learning how things work. So yeah, there's hidden. So when Jesus talked about these spiritual principles, I always wonder, well, how much does that apply to the physical world? Like, there's a hidden math in the world that people have discovered, over the last few hundred years. And I always wonder if God or Jesus was alluding to a lot of that in his parables. And a lot of it does connect, like the eye of the needle. But then you look at, I don't know, not regressive analysis, but just kind of finding that balance on like the bell curve, where there's an optimal point. You go too far this way and it misses, you go too far that way, and that's kind of like there's this narrow point sometimes of making a business profitable, or making a wise financial decision. With me, I trade in liquidity pools, and it's very difficult to find that perfect balance, because you go a little bit this way and you're losing money, and a little bit this way and you're losing money. You're trying to find that eye of the needle. So there's these kind of mathematical principles that you see in the Bible. I don't know if that's exactly what they're referencing or how that works, but it's interesting that it's there. So, but I don't think that is what the spiritual world is. It's the spiritual world isn't this hidden math that was hidden and governing things, but they just couldn't see it. I think there's an actual spiritual world, but maybe it's like a mirror type of thing. But it's interesting. Um, but I see people at war with reality. Drug addicts. They're trapped. They're living in air, and it's sad. And I feel like to a certain extent they're victims, but their mental model of what the world is different than the real world, and they fell into a trap because they made a bad choice, and then maybe people led them into that bad choice as well. And sometimes it was doctors, and Quentin Tarantino likes to make movies that kind of glorify these harsh drugs and make it seem cool, and that's a lie. I mean, it's a clear lie. And then some people still have this kind of misunderstanding of how the world really works. When you look at the math, I'm always going on about finances and how important it is to avoid debt. But a lot of people can't see that, and that's a trap. And that's when your mental model of how the world works is different than how it really works, and then eventually you'll hit the consequences of that. Eventually that bites you, and maybe you don't see it for 10, 20, 30 years. I got into debt when I was 20. I got $30,000 in debt, more 40,000 I think, when I hit the very bottom of when I maxed out my credit cards. And then I had to spend the next 20 years paying it off, just living crazy cheap and doing jobs that I hated. And it was a massive mistake. And I kind of had this warning in my spirit, like, you should be working. You're not working, and you're spending money. You're slowly going into debt. I had a line of credit, and that kind of, I got lazy, and I wasn't on top of my finances, and then I paid the price. So there's consequences in life. I don't believe God ever, sometimes God will have mercy on you and save you, but I think really He wants you to live according to wisdom of this world. So people are at war with reality, and you see people making mistakes, and you want to help them, but you can't really change what other people do. Or you see people dabbling with drugs, and they shouldn't be, or kind of getting into bad relationships and all these things. There's just a million traps out there, and I believe kind of a faith in Jesus is the key to kind of avoiding the traps of the physical world and getting through life without kind of being evil and doing bad things and being trapped. So there's an interesting parable that's really weird. Luke 16, 1-3, the wise manager. So this guy's a manager, and he's got power to control the finances of his boss. And then I think he's going to get fired or something. Or he sees bad times coming. So what he does is, and really when you look at it, he's kind of like stealing. But he cuts down the debtors' debts by half just to have these people like him, so that when he gets fired, they'll help him out. But he's kind of using the resources of his boss to kind of help himself out in the future. But it's kind of presented as this is a wise thing to do. And he says, that there's a verse in there that says like that the children of darkness are wiser than the children of light. And it's like he's saying, like, sometimes Christians get so detached from the physical world that they ignore the reality of what their everyday life is. And there's a song when I was a kid, it's like, so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good, and I've seen that in Christians too, where they just get so focused on spiritual things that they ignore the physical reality. But I think Jesus isn't here to separate us from the physical reality. He's here to help us navigate it properly and to see it for what it is, instead of living by delusions and ignoring consequences, things like that. God wants us to understand the physical world that we live in. He doesn't want us to ignore it. It's not like you have faith and you just, you know, ignore it and then there's no consequences. God is here to help us conform to the world He created so that we can be successful in it and survive it. So yeah, that's a pretty weird verse because it seems like it's telling you to steal. But the manager's like, oh, or his boss ends up saying, oh, you know, you're wise, you did a right thing. So yeah, so anyways, be bold, be brave, do things that are outside of your comfort zone. Be crazy, always be pushing yourself. I think test and see that the Lord is good. Do things, that push the limits of God's creation. See what's out there for you, because maybe in your little safe little bubble isn't where God wants you to be. But yeah, there's this hidden math out there, and it's good for us to push the limits and kind of discover what we're capable of and what's possible. Have fun. We're in a construct that God created, and it's got rules and hidden things, and who knows what you'll find. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm just rambling. But yeah, I feel great. 3-day fast. See if I get through today, but I don't know. I'm not hungry right now. It's weird, and my brain's clear. So maybe I'll do this once a month or something. Be awesome. Maybe this is the key to unlock the doors of my life. Get out of my car and get a place. Pretty lazy though. But anyways, yeah, that's it. Thank you. Bye.